Amelia here. Thanks so much for watching my channel. Today's video is a little bit different. I asked a few weeks ago on Amelia's Dressage Club, which if you're not a member yet, check it out, the link's below. But I had people send in videos that they needed help with. So I got a video from Jennifer, and she's struggling to get her horse a little bit rounder and softer in the contact. So today's video, first we're going to look at some clips of her riding, and then I'm going to demonstrate on one of my horses what I would do in this situation to get the horse a little rounder and a little more supple. So here's what Jennifer has to say. Dear Amelia, thanks for your offer to give feedback as part of your videos. I've attached two very short clips here that give you a good illustration of our main issue at the moment, roundness. And she's not alone. A lot of us struggle with getting our horses rounder. As you can see, my horse is not going around like a giraffe, but he's also not very round either, is he? Any shorter rein length than this, and he pokes his nose and braces heavily. I have a great instructor. We are currently working on small circles, leg yield, and shoulder in to focus on inside flexion and stepping under. My horse is a 10-year-old warm blood gelding. We think he likely has some issues, conformational challenges, working properly from behind, but he is young, very fit, and is vetted, sound, physio, dentist, saddle fitter, everything. I've tried using a few different bits to him, but to no avail. Any tips you have with roundness would be amazing, as we've kind of hit a wall. So yes, Jennifer, I watched the video and I do have some tips that hopefully will help you to get your horse a little rounder. And for sure, like you said, the exercises that you're working on, like circles and leg yields, that's all definitely on the right track. It is also important anytime you have a horse like this that just like feels stiff and they don't really want to come round, it does have to do with the hind legs and with the horse's ability to really come under and through from behind. And that's not to say that it can't get better, but whatever you feel in your hands is a reflection of what's happening behind. So anyways, let's get to the video and I will give her some tips. Okay, so one thing that I just wanted to point out to start with is that Jennifer does a really good job of maintaining her position. And this can be a challenge, you know, when your horse is a little stiff and you're trying to get them round. A lot of times what I see is riders end up tipping too forward. Another common rider mistake in this situation is riders will straighten out their elbows in order to try to get the horse a little rounder. But Jennifer, overall, she does a good job of maintaining her position. Her elbows are bent, so kudos to her. I definitely see, though, how he is stiff and, you know, he's not really round. I like that she's doing some transitions, like some trot, canter, trot transitions. Those are a great way to work on getting the horse a little bit more supple. I would also encourage her to just keep thinking about that independent seat, because again, when your horse is stiff and they're kind of resistant in your hands, it's hard to maintain a following seat as you're using your fingers and trying to just get your horse a little bit rounder and more through. So now I'm going to show you a few tips that I think will help Jennifer to get her horse a little bit more rounder and a little bit more supple. And comment in the links below if this video is helpful to you and if you struggle with the same thing. And thank you, Jennifer, for sending us these video clips. Hopefully they help you get your horse a little rounder. So today we are giving Jennifer some tips to get her horse a little bit rounder. And I'm sure you saw in the video of her and her horse that, you know, he doesn't have his head straight up in the air, but you can tell that he looks kind of stiff and heavy. And so hopefully we can give her a few tips to get her horse a little more supple and soft and round, because it's not fun to ride when your horse is just so strong and stiff. So this is Jacques, and I don't have any horses that are like super stiff, so I'm going to do my best to demonstrate on him the things that I would try. So one thing that I might recommend to Jennifer is to just, you know, from the ground, work on some carrot stretches, you know, and getting the horse to where you make sure that they're really flexible, like that they can bend their head all the way around. Like you can see this horse, is very flexible, and like when I just ask with my rein, it's pretty easy for him to turn his head to the left. Let's see how he is to the right. So that's always kind of a place to start, is from the ground, and you can even just do some simple bending with your horse from the ground. I'll link some groundwork videos below. So just kind of check out your horse's neck flexibility in a context that doesn't even have to do with you riding first. If your horse has a really hard time bending their neck around for a carrot or on the ground, then that's a sign that they're just stiff and you need to work on their flexibility. So when you're riding, if I have a horse that's like super stiff and I just can't get them to get soft, a lot of times what I'll start with is just simply a little simple bending exercise when I'm on them. So I'm just going to simply take the right rein, and I want my horse to tip his nose and then his body follows. So he's tipping his head to the right and his body is following where his head is looking. You don't want your horse to bend their neck around and keep going straight, because that could be like a big problem, because you kind of need this to be your emergency stop. So you can see here, like when I take my inside rein, my horse basically bends his head around to my foot and turns. So this is kind of where I start with the suppleness. My guess is that with Jennifer's horse, he's probably going to have a hard time bending this much laterally, but you always want to work on this lateral suppleness, and that's going to help when you take up two reins. That's going to help to get your horse rounder if you can just get them to give to one rein at a time. If when you're doing this your horse's head is like straight up in the air, it's mainly inside rein, but if your horse's head is just straight up in the air, you can use a little outside rein to just kind of encourage the horse's neck to drop lower. So that's one idea I have for Jennifer. The second idea that I would have for her is that, you know, it looks like the horse is pretty stiff in the trot and the canter. So what I would do is I would start at the walk, and I would get my horse really round, like where I want them to be at the walk, and then I would work on doing some walk, halt, walk transitions. So just halt and get him, you know, really in a frame where you feel like, okay, he's round enough here, or maybe he's even a little extra round, like my horse is a little too round there. And then I would just work at the walk, work through walk, halt, walk transitions until you can do these transitions and the horse, come on, he needs to get a little sharper to my leg, but that the horse really stays round enough in these walk, halt, walk transitions. Good boy. So that you really are, at least at the walk and the halt, achieving the roundness that you want. And sometimes, you know, okay, like I've had comments in the past, like your horse is behind the vertical, your horse is too round. But sometimes you can't ride in a show frame all the time. Sometimes you need to make them a little extra round, or, you know, just a hair behind the vertical to make them supple and correctly using their back. And there's a difference between roll cur and behind the vertical. So when you do roll cur is actually like where the horse will literally just drop their neck down from the withers and their eyeballs will be looking down at the ground. So roll cur is like a very, very extreme form of behind the vertical. Riding your horse a hair behind the vertical for a stride or two is sometimes actually very beneficial. So my third tip for Jennifer, let me see if he'll demonstrate being stiff here, is that, like, if I'm going along here and my horse isn't round enough and he's kind of just stiff and pulling on me, you know, Jennifer has a really nice position and her hands are in a really good position. Okay, I guess he wants to canter, but sometimes if you want to get your horse round, you have to take your hands a little out of this perfect position. So if I want to make my horse rounder, I'm going to take my hands a little wide And I might for a moment or two be kind of a human side rein to get my horse really round and on the bit. So like you can see here, I still have a bend in my elbows, that's really important, but my hands are wide to get him on the bit. And then when he's on the bit, I'm gonna put my hands back in the correct position. But there's definitely a time that if your horse is really locked up in the neck, like if he's just pulling and he's so above the bit, that you might need to like take your hands a little wide, like, and a little low, and bend him a little and give, and bend him a little and give, and just kind of get him to move his neck around. And then when your horse is round and soft, then you put your hands back in that perfect position. So you always want to start with suppling with your fingers and your wrist and try to maintain that nice hand position. But if that doesn't work, you may need to take your hands a little low and wide or bend a little more to get your horse to unlock. It's really important when you do that, when you take your hands a little low and wide, that you keep a bend in your elbow. So you don't want to do this and lock your arms out, because that's going to make your arms really stiff. But you can take your hands a little bit low and wide and still bend your elbows. So that's super important. And then my last tip to Jennifer is to do some bending lines. So at the walk, you can do some turn on the forehands. At the trot, you can do serpentines and bending lines to help just get that horse a little bit more supple. So at the walk, I would practice doing some turn on the forehands where you're really trying to get him off of the inside leg and into the outside rein, like this. Here I'm just doing a big turn on the forehand. Anytime your horse gets stuck, go a little bit forward. But what a turn on the forehand does is that it really gets into your horse's rib cage, because if they're stiff back here, they're going to be stiff in the neck, and it gets your horse stepping from your inside leg to the outside rein. And then make sure that you do that in both directions. Good boy. Good. And then take that same idea up to your trot and canter. So, you know, like working when you do your circles and serpentines, kind of exaggerate pushing your horse off the inside leg, getting your horse into that outside rein, maybe bending them a little extra, and then really giving on the inside rein. So here I'm like really pushing him off the right leg, moving him into that outside rein, bending him a little extra, and then giving a little on that inside rein. So getting your horse a little more inside leg to outside rein is going to get you that little bit more roundness that you want, where you just don't feel like your horse is so stiff. You need to feel like your horse is bendable. And it's really like when you're riding, you want the horse's neck to feel supple and elastic. You want the horse to feel, I always say it's kind of like a cooked spaghetti noodle. So like with this horse, I should be able to bend him a little more to the right. I should be able to make his neck straight. I should be able to bend him a little to the left without anything changing. I should also be able to make him a little lower and rounder, like that, or to bring him a little bit higher, boy, like that. So it's just really about developing that adjustability with your horse to where when you're riding, you really want the neck muscles, like the whole neck, to feel supple and soft and movable in front of you. You don't want it to just be feeling stiff. Like in Europe, they have a saying where they say that the horse swallowed a broomstick. if they're stiff, they say the horse feels like it swallowed a broomstick because the neck is just unmovable. So let me know if your horse feels like it swallowed a broomstick, but if it does, hopefully these tips will help to get your horse a little more supple. And thank you to Jennifer for sending in this video clip. I hope that these tips help you get your horse a little rounder and softer in the contact. That's it for today. Good boy, Jack.